I'm Josh Allen, and welcome to the Baked In Podcast, where I sit down with industry innovators to uncover the unique ideas and values that are baked into their businesses and have led to extraordinary success. This podcast is presented by Busey Bank, my banking partner for my business since 2007. Busey understands the importance of putting your money to work for you. From their business checking and savings accounts to fraud protection and receivable services, Busey is by your side. Rely on their experts to secure and streamline your operations to help you maximize value and minimize costs. Discover how Busey Bank can support your business at busey.com/business. On this week's episode, I'm sitting with Brittany Dwyer, the visionary behind Disco. Disco is not your typical event planning company. It's an innovative organization that merges traditional event strategy with cutting-edge software solutions, helping businesses connect with their audiences in ways that truly resonate. Brittany and her team have been transforming how companies approach events, not just as one-off experiences, but as integral parts of their customer and employee engagement strategies. In today's conversation, we'll explore the obstacles Brittany has faced scaling Disco, how she's navigated the ever-evolving event landscape, and what keeps her up at night as she looks to the future. We'll also dig into the broader theoretical value of events, how they can be a game changer for building stronger customer relationships and fostering an engaged workforce. Let's roll. So kind of before we jump into the business side of it, though, I am kind of interested in this Kranberg's Foundation Artist in Residence. So we're sitting in a Kranberg building here. We're at the Zach building in downtown St. Louis, or Grand Center. And so when I was researching, I kind of didn't know if you even had, if your office was here, but you just mentioned it was down the street. But tell me a little bit about kind of how you got involved with that, and then what it's meant, because I guess this is November, so you're 11 months into the year, right? Yeah.
So I, stepping back on how that came about, I won an Arch Grant in 2022, and Kranberg and Arch Grants have a really great relationship. And so they started talking about, hey, how can we really bring the entrepreneurial community together a lot more with the artists in our residence program? And so I just got looped into those conversations. They said, hey, we want Disco to be the first company. With my background in events too, they were like, we really think you could help bridge this. And so we just sat down and started looking at what does it look like to bring entrepreneurs and artists together. And so we had kind of an introduction celebration and just asked people's feedback on what they wanted to see. And we're still working through the nuts and bolts of what long-term the program's going to be. But ultimately, the goal of that is to get artists further connected with opportunities within the business community and vice versa. So
is it a one-year commitment? Is that what you're committing?
Yeah.
And then so you have, the other thing that you're kind of doing right now, the Tours and Pours, which you're doing with Greater St. Louis Inc., I think. Is that associated? Is that sort of kind of growing out of this, or not?
No, that's separate. Just meeting with Greater St. Louis, getting connected with them on, hey, what kind of activations are you wanting to do? And was just having coffee with someone from Greater St. Louis. And she said, I just really want to do, a wine walk or something where we're going a lot of places. And with Disco, we have a lot of requests for progressive dinners. And something I think we're really great at is writing an awesome itinerary, letting people see multiple businesses. So I was like, oh, we could handle this for you. And that's been a really successful event.
So, you're a relatively new company. It's only been around a couple of years. Can you give me just the elevator pitch, just so that the listeners have because I won't do it justice. So give me the elevator pitch of Disco, because I do have some questions, actually, as I was researching it, thinking about, well, go ahead and give me that.
And it has evolved, so that's okay. So we've been around. I quit my job about 3 years ago, but Disco, at the heart of it, is a platform for booking group events and experiences. I like to say curated group events and experiences for corporate companies, which is kind of a recent change. But our focus is really through the platform services and our people, giving corporate companies access to local businesses, entertaining their teams and clients, and hosting better events.
So the first thing that kind of comes to mind when I think about that is it a software solution? Is it a platform that then can grow into any city, any area? Or is it is it a lot to do with your experience specifically in hospitality in St. Louis? Because I know you came out of the restaurant business a lot in St. Louis, worked with Gerard Kraft. Like, you have a lot of experience and a lot of know-how, and it's very market specific currently because you've curated these relationships with the businesses that are on the platform, right? I mean, a business has to go through a process in order to be able to take reservations, to be part of the event planning. So do you define it more as a software solution or more as event planning?
So
or is that an unfair question?
Well, yeah, it's a combination of both. And actually, like, the trend in software as a service is is kind of a service supported software, I guess you could say. And so we have been building the software alongside like our discovery and what that event planning process needs. So right now, a corporate company, whenever they start working with us, the focus is on the software that they need. So how can they plug in events on a calendar or throughout the year and say, I want to plan team building, and think more holistically about what they want to plan, and basically then hand it off to us. And through the software, our team put in their recommendations, pair them with things that make sense, and really end to end let them have one vendor. So that's our goal, is like being one point of contact and one kind of partner in thinking through the goals of what their events are. And so as a software, originally whenever we started out, it was like a traditional marketplace. So we were like kind of forcing the businesses to connect their calendar, because I am really passionate about like making it so much faster, right? And the process has been, okay, I'm going to send an email, reach out on a form to 12 different businesses. I don't really know where I want to go, and then wait maybe 72 hours in some cases to hear back on, is that space available, and putting together the part. So I told the businesses, if we really want to solve this right, so you need to connect a calendar, availability needs to be up to date so people can book on demand. That's changed a little bit. We still have like a super fast response time, but I want to reduce the friction in partnering with us on the vendor business side, because it's really important to, have such a widespread, range of options. So as a software, the focus is really now more towards the tools for the corporate businesses.
So like most tech companies, I guess I'll ask the question, how do you make your money in the deal? Like, are you getting a percentage of every booking, or is it a project basis where there's a fee associated with just planning the event, and there isn't? Like, how does it work?
So most of our money is now going to come from the corporate businesses and the subscriptions there. And they can either choose, like if it's an enterprise company, like there's a large enterprise company that we did a proposal for recently, that they have 15 teams that they want to do a cohesive team building program. So what we're doing is building a digital catalog that anyone from these 15 teams at any time can see like their approved team building options and book those on demand, or within 48 hours. And so they're paying for that service, for us to think strategically about it, take all that time away that their employees are spending thinking about it, maybe not planning, and hand that off to us a little bit, and be kind of a partner in that. And then on the vendor business side, we do take a referral fee for preferred partners. So that's where our partnership with like Bucket List comes in, being ranked higher in the marketplace, being kind of our first choice vendor, and essentially selling on behalf of the businesses without them having to do anything. We do take like a referral fee from the businesses, but we don't charge the vendors to be a part of it.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, you don't have to pay as a business to list. The corporate companies are paying to plan with us.
And do you think long term, do you see the revenue sliding more and more towards the subscription aspect of the business? I mean, is that the long term opportunity, you think?
Yeah.
So how critical is it, just to sort of play out my question about like scalability and thinking about other markets? Because I know I heard you on another podcast talking about Austin or talking about Kansas City or other markets that you can go into. Does the intimacy of obviously the intimacy and the knowledge of that market becomes pretty critical in order to plan these events. Is it something that you could potentially license to somebody who already has that knowledge, or do you see building the teams in those other markets that would build those businesses and sort of drive that and kind of continue to own it 100%?
Yeah, I've thought about both. So what we did, we had a company host an event in San Francisco that was essentially like a duplicate of an event that they hosted here. We did send someone on site because it was such a big event. But the way that we kind of plan that out is we now with St. Louis have a base model. I mean, I think in my database, I have like 600 like options for experiences that I've kind of mapped over the past 3 years. And it's really kind of setting the foundation of like, what's the scope of things people want to plan? What are the trends? What are the opportunities? So for this wellness event, we knew exactly the types of vendors and the profiles that they needed to match. And so it was a lot easier to go into another market. We're not really starting out cold because we know the baseline of things that people want to plan. You're going to want like the high-end dinner, like a couple progressive dinner options, and starting more tailored towards a specific category. So if a company that plans with us here wants to expand to another market, instead of saying, I'm going to build a huge marketplace in Austin with 400 options, we're going to start with the specific categories of what they know they're going to book immediately. So it's like a team building category for 25 within 5 miles of our office. And then we're going to build the catalog out that way.
But you still have to build that trust and credibility with the vendors, right? Because that's the beauty of what you've done here is that you've sort of vetted these folks. Even over time, you know that if I book a dinner here, they're gonna nail it. They're gonna hit it on.
For sure.
They're gonna be on time when they say what they're gonna do. They're gonna do it. And I'm sure there's some that drop the ball a little bit, and then you have to make a decision, long term, if that's a partner to continue to work with. But you go into a new market and you have to learn kind of from scratch.
Yeah. And so ideally what we would do is find a person that's like already heavily connected in the scene and has like built that trust as working with us, either as a full-time employee or like a market partner. So using like STL Bucket List as a reference, like they obviously have a great reputation here too. But being able to say like, hey, have someone else vetting like boots on the ground as well is going to be important because I'm not going to be able to do that. So licensing, that's interesting. But I think, now I am so heavily involved that I think it would be more of like a market lead or someone.
Is St. Louis still enough for you to handle? There's enough business here. There's enough opportunity that you're not looking outside of St. Louis, other than with the existing relationships that you have asking for events out of town?
Yeah. Outside of the existing relationships, we're not like actively seeking outside of St. Louis at this very moment because the business has grown so much right now in St. Louis with some of the bigger accounts that we're bringing on. So I just want to make sure that we're focused on delivering and not trying to like do too much, spread ourselves too thin, because what we're solving here is like it's pretty large in the sense of like making sure when we send the notifications, for instance, for events, it's like just chiseling out all the pieces and the parts to make sure that it's really great and really perfect and delivering for people here with what we already have.
So seamless means that if I plan an event through you, the communication to the people that I'm inviting, it's all handled, right? It all gets taken care of once I plug those folks in and you know who I'm including in that event?
Right. So what we heard was like, hey, I booked this event through you. Like, do you have like an event, like something you can design for us or whatever, like to invite our employees. So what we're working on now is as soon as they book the event, they can like generate a link that creates the RSVP site that then once people RSVP, we see it. So they're not having to like go collect that. That's just an example. For a company that, we have a company that's doing like an office Olympics, with food and everything, like actually in their office. And it's sending them like exactly what to expect. So it's like, all right, what are the templates? Like what is everything scope wise we should be covering in this, and then growing on that. So we even sent them like tips and tricks on hosting the best event. So we really do want to be a thought leader and not just like this super transactional process, but being like, you're hosting an office Olympics because obviously you want to engage better. So make sure here's a recommendation for a playlist, or make sure that this space is cleared. And so it's making sure that we're being thoughtful about every part of it.
Do you guys send in coordinators, or are there people that would come in to help facilitate the event, or is it fairly hands-off as it relates to kind of what Disco does on site that particular day? For the Olympics, as an example. If I've never hosted an employee Olympic event, and you're giving me all these ideas, is there somebody that comes in and sort of holds our hand through that, or is there a line drawn between
So most of the events to date have been able to like have a handoff. Like those, for instance, though, they can choose to have someone on site. So that's a part of the experience, is like that's built in. So the actual vendor provider that's putting the kit together and that idea, like she's going to drop it off, like just like a catering.
Sure.
So I'm not like personally facilitating that game, but we partner.
So you found a vendor who
Yes.
puts on employee Olympic engagement.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it's actually like us bringing the ideas too. So a lot of things that we do are like look at what's trending and what people are looking at doing. And so in that case, like actually at my family summer trip, my sister-in-law put together like this Olympics experience. And I was like, will you do this for a corporate team? Like she's so good at it and she's like really organized. And so she put that together. That's kind of like a one-off, but it's us looking at the business and saying, like Deli and Wine, we were like, hey, can you add a natural wine tasting? Like we really want something a little bit more interactive so that people can get up and like hear about what you're serving here, like how cool it is, the way that you're curating your wine selection, but also learning about natural Italian wines. And a lot of people don't know the difference between natural wines. So I always want to have an element like that, and it's working with the vendor to see like, does it fit? Is this in their wheelhouse? And inviting them to offer something a little bit different.
So where do you look to see what trends would exist in customer and employee engagement? I mean, I have curiosity, like where, I mean, obviously you found one at a family event, but is there other sources? Are there things that you're reading about or looking at specifically that would bring that information to you?
Yeah. So one, it's talking to our customers, like about it's always interesting to hear like what people are asking for and what they've done in the past that's worked really well. So when people are like, well, last year we did X thing, I'm always like, well, how was that? Like what did people like about that? Was it successful? If it was, then that's cool. I should recommend that to someone else or bring that in. Instagram is huge. So if I see like a business that opens up that has an opportunity for an event or like an idea or that's hosting an event that's ticketed, then I'll think about how can I turn that like into a private experience, which a lot of times you can't just because of the moving parts, but a lot of times you actually can. So then I don't necessarily have to go back to the vendor business and say, hey, list this as a private event. It's like no friction on them. It's us being like, can we sell this? Should we recommend this to somebody? So, I think as we scale, it's coming up with things that it's that process and the elements that we can take to the vendor business without them having to be like, let's onboard to Disco. Just kind of having the idea ready to go.
How do you prioritize your investment, whether it's time or energy or money, in technology, in bringing the technology up to speed, whether it's the RSVP, all those kinds of things, versus the people and the idea side of the business? How do you prioritize your time? Is it sort of the squeaky wheel gets the most attention, or the weakest link in the chain, and that's what you're sort of fixing, and then kind of growing on it there, or do you have a intentional kind of plan as you look at, okay, I have to get this technology up to speed first before I can then do that, or kind of leapfrogging it? Or how do you think about those things?
It's been a leapfrog approach because we're a bootstrap company. And so it truly
is still just you as the full-time employee?
Mm-hmm. Or okay. And then everyone else is like contractors. So my developer is a contractor, but he's now been with me for 2 years. And so we have like a good team, but full-time employee, it's just me. And so it's kind of looking at it as like chunks of growth in the business. So right now we're growing. We have clients that are actively waiting and are larger corporate clients. And so the attention needs to be on like making sure everything's like really working well for those clients end to end before like something new comes on, just based on their specific needs. And we know that it's also ranking based on, okay, we know every client's actually gonna want this, or 75%, and then just making the call to like build it out and get it ready. So right now, a focus is on quite a few corporate events that are like starting their programs or kind of jumping off in the new year. And so the software development is gonna match that as a priority.
And do you have that knowledge personally, or that's all outsourced to the developer and sort of, this is the idea that I need to bring to the table? And I mean, you're not doing coding, you're not that person.
No, but I basically, so with AI now, like I wireframe I do all the user experience. Like I actually don't have a designer anymore because right now it's so focused on usability of the product, and then we'll go back and make it look like amazing. But I wireframe everything and actually can kind of start that process for the developers with tools that are out there now. So ensuring that like all of the requirements are written and then actually giving them a wireframe that's somewhat coding functional, and then they put that into our product. So you can actually do that with AI tools. So I've recently shifted to like getting it a step further for the developers, but ultimately like the user experience, I'm doing that work.
So what keeps you up at night as you start to look at this new activity and the subscription service and all of that? What do you think is the biggest challenges sort of or obstacles in front of you right now?
The biggest obstacle is on the vendor side. I know for sure like this, it's like looking really great from like a need perspective on the end client, and we have actual real customers. But now that I'm like not requiring people to like hook in their availability, it's like solidifying that process and like vetting the vendors, getting them onboarded, and confirming availability, because I want it to be like very quick. So
because everybody's on a different system, right? I mean, even if you just look at restaurants, they're all on a different POS system, a different reservation system. There's no commonality at all with the vendor base, right?
Right. And most people don't have a system, right? It's like, okay, like you would be surprised. There's a lot of people that even if they have a form, it's like going to the general manager who doesn't come until Wednesday, or sometimes we're so busy it takes 4 days, because like in the mind sometimes of the people that it's been tasked with, because it's been this almost like afterthought, people like it's not like their top of mind thing, right? So it's like once they have a few events and they're like, wow, that actually bought me a new smoker, especially if we're working with a smaller business, they realize the importance of it. But it's more of that element, right? Because the people that do have like a big system in place, they're super responsive because they have a dedicated full-time employee to that.
But it behooves you to help the small guy because you want the breadth of services and opportunities and programs. You don't want to just keep feeding the stuff to the same super nimble, successful
100%,
groups,
yeah,
right? So you have to almost invest in the vendors for them, I'm assuming.
Yes. And so actually the tools are still like my long-term vision in like 6 months to a year is to have like free software for the vendors, especially like small business, like scaling to a certain degree. Like if you only host, 3 or 4, but what you see, so Videra Wine Bar, for example, she like wants to run the business and she had people coming and asking for events. So through Disco, I'm like, she throws her link up on Instagram. She sends everyone to us. She has QR code cards that we made for her because she's like, I want to host events, but I'm not like an expert in this space. And they're losing out on business, right? Because they're not being prompt. And so I really do have a passion for helping on that side because I can see how it can transform businesses. And I think the statistic is like 75% of people that come to events are new customers in the business. So I try to tell local businesses that like, yes, like it's a little bit of planning on your end to like make sure all the food comes out on the same time, like what goes into events. But ultimately, if you can get 75% of the people in a group of 50 in the door for the first time, give them a great experience, like that is powerful marketing.
Sure.
And someone else is doing that for you. So, make it a great experience, go all out, and also offer these things if you can.
Yeah, so you can be a tremendous resource to those folks. So
yeah.
Let's kind of transition a little bit because I'm interested in maybe just sort of talk through some of the events that you've done that are more unique or interesting, or what are some of those trends? Because as somebody, we've got 100 employees and we do a picnic every year in the summer, which we've done for 30 years, and we have a photographer coming in. We're going to do Christmas pictures, thanks to Tamara at Clementine's, whose idea was to bring in a photographer and take family photos for people. So we're bringing in a photographer and Santa, and we're going to let folks take family pictures that we're going to pay for and let them come in and do that. But we're always looking for ideas. And so Talk about some of the kinds of things. I mean, you mentioned progressive dinners, whether this is for employee engagements, whether it's leadership teams or frontline workers and customer events. Just what kinds of things are you seeing from a trend perspective?
Yeah, and that's on the Santa thing. We do that for my annual personal holiday party. We like bring in a photographer and do Santa, so that's funny. Everyone loves it. On the trend side, so I mentioned the San Francisco event. We've done now probably 5 this year of the curated women's wellness happy hour. So trends in general are,
which is funny, the wellness and the happy hour kind of comment.
Yeah, well, we always make sure. Yeah, we always make
sure. There's always
a
drink at the end.
Well, yeah, there's one was a lunch and okay. And yeah, it doesn't have to be drinking centered.
But what does it look like? What does a wellness event look like?
So they get to choose from a menu of options of providers. So popular options have been the massage therapist. We did a DIY salt bath creation. Color analysis. What else have we done? Manicures, pedicures. So you can choose from all the things that you want to offer, and then you can have healthy snacks, food and beverage. And so that's been really popular because when people are thinking about events, people used to do maybe 1 or 2 larger events throughout the year. So what we heard was breaking those into smaller groups. And I think a lot of that might have been driven by COVID and trends of people doing things in smaller groups, but also then realizing that you can be more impactful whenever you break it down into smaller things. So okay, instead of doing one large thing, we're going to do 4 different things of 25 people. And this one's going to be women-centric, wellness-centric. This one's going to be focused on X topic and having a speaker and a lunch and learning something about it. And so that's been interesting to kind of be a part of that trend shift. But the wellness lunch, those always do amazing. The tours and the progressive dinner that we just did, it's just top of mind. But
progressive dinner would just be one course at multiple restaurants, kind of within a walking area.
Yeah, and we have one in Clayton, December 5th. We're doing with a client. They're starting off with appetizers at one restaurant. Second restaurant is entrees and salads. Third restaurant, desserts and drinks. So again, people are looking for immersive and interactive, and there really is only so much you can do in terms of activities within a certain amount of time. But I think those are some of the coolest.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that it's important, just because I don't know, but I'm guessing that these have to sort of be non-work, right? Like you do everything. I was listening to you on some other podcasts, sort of ensuring that there's no work that sneaks into this for them to be super valuable, right? So when you mentioned a speaker, it's a wellness speaker, it's somebody on financial literacy. It's something that has nothing to do with their job on a daily basis, because the interaction amongst whether it's customers or employees, it's important to have it be non-work related.
Right, personal professional development, but we have a ton of companies that plan full day offsite meetings through us too. And the goal, companies now are renting space to do an offsite with executives or solve a certain thing. So that's also a trend of stepping out of the office or bringing remote workers together and saying, all right, we have from 8 to 5. And so it's mapping out the meeting space, and then they pick a lunch option, and then afterwards they do it. So what we see a lot is sometimes it's not just one experience, but people are planning 3 or 4 things in one day through us. And I think it's really cool the companies are doing that, because it shows they're investing in their employees. There are a lot of statistics that show when you change the environment, but also you're in person, it increases creativity, and the way people discuss things is getting out of your day-to-day environment. So people will get work done at the events they do with us. At a dinner or a happy hour, though, it's a lot of times it's more focused on just letting people decompress, have a conversation in ways that they're not probably normally speaking with a colleague that's in a different department, or hearing about your family, or just learning more about the people that you spend 40 plus hours a week with. That's the goal.
So are you doing more? Does it lean more heavily towards employee engagement versus customer appreciation? Or
it's about 50-50.
About 50-50?
Yeah. An example of a financial client is they have, they just started, they've got salespeople, multiple salespeople. So say you're a financial broker, there could be 20 of them under this business, and they all need to host client events. And so we're creating essentially like an approved link or recommended of like, these are your 12 options. Like we know every single one of you needs to do a client dinner and a happy hour this year. These are the picks based on what you need to cover.
And the budget's already been established.
Yes,
and
it's exactly how much it's going to cost.
Right.
It like gets put right on their calendar. They don't really have to do much.
So what kind of metrics are you using to sort of, as you think about the value of these things? I mean, I know you talk a lot about Net Promoter Score and some of that stuff, but is that really, I mean, how do you, if we flip the script a little bit and not talk so much about disco, but talk more about the value of employee engagement or customer appreciation. So what are you hearing as folks are doing more of these things or doing them more regularly in terms of the impact?
So a recent survey that we sent out, we focused on like peer-to-peer relationships, and then we did do NPS, but overall sentiment towards the company. And that was like a 9.1 out of 10 in terms of impact. That was actually like a bar Olympics at like a local place. But they rated it 9.1 out of 10 on peer-to-peer relationships. And the reason why we were measuring peer-to-peer relationships is because we were hearing a lot of data around lack of loyalty in businesses, and employees don't feel like loyal or connected. And one of those things are a lack of strong peer-to-peer relationships. So it's, another one, like remote workers. So remote workers that do in-person events, I think the statistic is like 25% feel more connected with the company when they can do in-person events, which makes sense. Like if you're sitting at home and you're never meeting your coworkers, you're not going to feel connected to the company. And long-term, reducing that turnover rate is so important to corporate clients because, I mean, it could cost a corporate company $25,000 to $50,000 to replace a strong employee. Whereas, like, if you just nurture that relationship, if you could do more to make them, feel better about coming to work and feel connected to the mission of the company and the people they were working with, that saves companies a ton of money throughout the year. So those are the things that we're looking at. Putting out front when we're saying like here's the value of it.
Are you hearing anecdotally that it's working? Like, or you're getting a lot of repeat business from the same folks because they're seeing the value?
Yes, repeat business is like the core of like what's going to make it work and grow long term, and that's what we want. It's like taking a thoughtful approach, and it shows if you're like. Someone we were meeting with, they're like, oh my gosh, like this would be so much better because most of the time it's like, we should do a happy hour. Okay, let's walk next door. And you can tell there wasn't like thought put into it. And it's like, people aren't really committed to it. So most of the time it's the same 5 people that go. It's not, let's think ahead and get this on the book. So people that book with us do repeat business because they are seeing it convert and work.
And they're seeing that, I mean, it's seamless and it's easier, obviously, than to manage it yourself, which is and
that's where business gets done. I mean, I know that's like the classic, like, people, it gets done on the golf course or whatever, but you can see it. Like when you're having a conversation in person, it really is different. And the likelihood of closing a deal or of kind of getting to the root of like a specific issue that someone's having, it's so much easier to do that in person, maybe over like a little bit more of like a casual setting and just like building trust. Like trust is a huge part of it. If you have that conversation and you're gonna leave feeling more connected to that person.
So and obviously that all plays into it. So what other advice would you give to a business owner that's sort of trying to integrate events into their growth strategy? So if we're trying to grow the business and trying to not only attract new customers, but obviously deepen the relationships with existing ones, is there a place to start, or how would you sort of look at that for a small or medium-sized business owner?
Yeah, one, with what we do, we always try to look at what are you solving, right? And so I think it's rare for businesses to actually think about that, but that's what people are doing, right? When they come to your business, they're solving a need. And where we see a gap a lot of times is like not having thought through like what people are trying to get to, right? It's like a family style dinner with paired wines. Like we will create that a lot of times, but the business doesn't have that necessarily ready. But when you present something to someone as like baked and ready to go, like no pun, like ready to go, it's like, that's the thing we're looking for. It goes a long way. Like, this is how much it's going to cost. This is what we recommend, because they're looking at us as experts of telling them even like what to order off the menu. But as like a business, you know better than anybody what works well for a cocktail style party. Like, give me your best, right? That's what we hear people saying. So I think if we could see businesses do a little bit more of that, proactively saying like, yes, everyone has different tastes, but making them feel like they want to get that insider view and they want to get that VIP treatment. So like just thinking about what works well and just being upfront with that, I think is important.
Well, what if you don't know? I mean, what if we're getting together?
Oh.
You know, if we're bringing 24 kind of disparate customers. I mean, our customers in our particular instance are all in the hospitality industry, but you know, how do you think about or what advice do you have? You know, where do you start? Like because obviously it's going to be some awkwardness, right? And some uncomfortability, at least initially. So how do you break that ice, or, you know, how do you kind of talk through that with somebody?
So you're saying like if I'm talking to a business that wants to start offering events?
Let's talk to me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
what we would say, so like say you have like the cafe in like the De Pere location or whatever. We would say, all right, start thinking about the cost of like to open your doors, right? Like what does that just cost you? And what would you like to make on a specific day? Okay, well, between our...
No, I don't mean me as a vendor.
Oh.
I mean me as a business owner.
Okay, sorry. I apologize about that.
No. So I'm a business owner. You know, we have customers that are buying our bread wholesale, but we're looking to bring people together in a non-work related environment, customer appreciation.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that, because I was I don't know. Like, I'm trying to help here. Yeah, if you're trying to bring people together, I mean, it's asking like, okay, like what if
you don't know them, right? Like most of us, I have good personal relationships with many folks, but I don't know all that much about what they do outside of being a customer. I don't know much about their family. I don't know much about their hobbies and their likes and their interests. So you've got to sort of plan something that would be appealing and interesting to folks, you know. So where do you recommend sort of starting if you're inexperienced with hosting events?
So I think the social, like either the happy hour or like something cocktail centered is like best for that, because we see that if you're having a group of 50 people that don't know each other, it's like you don't necessarily want to sit them down for dinner, right? Or make them do something super intimate. So I really think like having a good spread of like snacks and appetizers, maybe like something a little bit hands-on, and then just being you, the person hosting, being prepared with the knowledge of like, okay, yes, I know enough to be inviting these people, right? So it's like, I understand this about John, and I think that they should meet this person. So I think it's about, people are going to have a great event when you've been thoughtful about the setting, but also thoughtful about like who they're going to talk to when they're there and the conversations that they're going to have. So like, I think the best event hosts are like kind of working the room and saying, you know, hey, like, have you met this person? Even though like they're different customers, like that San Francisco event, like these were like VP, like high-end executive suite people that have never met each other, but have probably like maybe even seen each other on social media. And the host, like there was a person dedicated to just making introductions. And it wasn't about selling their stuff at the event. It wasn't about that at all. It was purely about like making sure they left feeling like it was valuable for them, because they were giving up their time. So I think that's like, from a mindset, I think that's where I'd start advice-wise, is just like not thinking about what you're going to get out of the event as a business owner, because those things come naturally. It's about how are you going to make people feel if they take the time to come here.
What are and the introduction one is really intriguing, but what are the other sort of underlooked or missed opportunities at these kinds of events that you really recommend folks to think about?
Oh.
Or underrated, even things
underrated. I mean, like always having a good playlist. Like I think people don't think about that, but like, trust me, like if you're an event and like good music comes on, it's like people feel lighter. It's like, again, thinking through the details. Like maybe you're not a music person, but you know, setting the vibe. Like it sets the tone of the event. Like what's your kind of like call to action in your mind? Like thinking through that at the end of the event. So like whenever people leave, what are you like following up and like asking them for the next day? And I think a lot of people don't even think about that before they host the event, but it really is like point A to point Z is not the event concluding. It's what you do with that information after. So being thoughtful about like the follow-ups and the post-event, I think is always advice that I would give. And just keep doing it. Like that's the biggest advice. Like host one thing and think that you like have an event program. I would just recommend like be the person that people can count on and know, okay, they're always going to do XYZ throughout the year, because people want to do business with people that are like community driven and a fun time to be around. So I think,
and it takes practice. I'm
yeah,
assuming,
do more,
right?
you know.
So any particular situations where it didn't go as expected? Anything that you can think about where you know, any funny stories from the event planning business?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few. Like a recent one was I just like sound in a particular space. Like it was, you know, my own mistake of not having think about it, but I took them to a place that was like really great food, but it was just loud, you know, and it was like, okay, like the sound dynamics, you know, for a certain type is something that I hadn't thought that I
try to engage in conversation and encourage conversation. You can't hear each other.
Yeah, which actually you'd be shocked at the amount of places that really don't have good acoustics for events. That's an ongoing challenge. So that I could tell the host was like a little like, this is too loud. Like this was loud, but ultimately it was still fine. I haven't had anything like super catastrophic. Most things you can always work through.
Sure.
And figure out.
Any trends that are sort of passing that are high right now, but that you don't think will last, or anything in particular that you think like this is always going to be, you know, part of our bread and butter and it makes sense? Pun intended.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, trends wise, like I kind of stay away from like the axe throwing and like a couple, like I don't stay away from it, right? But I'm not like anybody, like it's like the thing. Like
I mean, we're seeing all kinds of golf, right? Like at Top Golf, we have Putt Shack. We've got like there's all kinds of
we're doing
sporting. You're doing a lot of sporting kind of thing.
So what we're working on right now is actually we're trying to get some curated packages from like sporting teams. That's like high on the list because it's like, hey, if you go to the Blues game with us, you get this. So hopefully we can make that happen. But I don't know, like I'm not usually recommending like cheesy icebreakers, you know, things like that aren't necessarily like where I'm putting my energy. I guess that's probably how I'd answer that. Yeah, I don't think I have another good answer for that one. And
well, you mentioned before we started recording that you have two daughters, so you obviously have a lot going on for yourself outside of disco. So what do you like to do with them or for yourself to sort of relax and recharge?
My daughters are 5 and 2. So yeah, they're at a very busy.
There is no relaxing.
Yeah. I really don't have a lot of free time for myself, but I think, you know, reading, I like to read like books, mostly on business. But with my daughters, we live by Castlewood State Park. So we're like we just want to be outside. So we have made kind of a hobby out of like checking out all the new playgrounds, and just hanging out. I don't know.
Have you been to the new one at Forest Park? Have you been to that?
Yeah, the Naturescape.
Is it cool?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
The one like Longview just redid theirs. Like it's good. So we're just kind of outside a lot and just hanging out. But we like to bring them along. So like we'll, you know, bop around to different places with my daughters, and they like that, like exploring and go to the zoo. Travel. We're going to do some travel next year. We're hoping to like spend a few weeks abroad somewhere. We're still deciding.
And that's hard, right? Like it's
yeah,
a few weeks is not
a few, yeah, and like, you know, part working, part not working. But I think that's important. Like I've never worked as many hours as like I've worked over the past few years. But it's finding, okay, I'm just gonna have to work at night. Like I work after the kids go down. I really try to make sure their time is not affected, but sometimes it is, and they're having fun. Like my 5-year-old, like she knows all about disco. She like has told her friends about like mom's work. And I think that's important, especially if you're running your own business. It's like your kids seeing you do something you're passionate about, I think is really cool. So I don't know. I don't shield them.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, the example that you set to me is one of the most critical things. Yeah. Of the whole thing. Like they're going to see that. They're going to see the passion. They're going to see the energy. They're going to see your excitement. They're going to see all of that. And I think that that's irreplaceable in terms of what you can offer them. Yeah.
My daughter was like, one day she said, something about Daddy's boss, like referencing something he had to do for work. which no offense, my husband, it's great. And then my daughter was like, yeah, but you don't have to do that because you're your own boss, mommy. And she was like so sassy about it. And I was like, that's right. Anyway, so she'll be a little girl boss someday, and we'll see.
Let's hope so, right?
Yeah.
Well, Brittany, it's great to meet you. I'm excited to hear all this about your business. It sounds really cool, and we need to do more every day. We have the same turnover challenges and retention issues that everybody else has, and it's great to think about this kind of stuff and see that somebody's out there helping solve the problems. I think more than anything, because you sort of sometimes feel a little bit lost in kind of knowing where to start. So I hope people will find you. How do they find you, actually, speaking of that, if they're interested in learning more about disco?
Our website is time2disco.com, so TIMETO disco. And then we're on Instagram, disco STL. So those are the best ways to find us.
Well, continued good luck, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed sharing these insights from folks I truly admire. Be sure and follow the show in your favorite podcast player to be alerted to newly released episodes. And share a comment if you have any feedback or future contributor recommendations.